Here's one simple methodology for using artificial intelligence to improve your discovery calls. So first, discovery calls need to have two main outcomes. Understanding what the problems are that the buyer has that you can potentially solve. Two, what are the consequences or impacts of solving those problems or not solving those problems? Those are the two key outcomes for a discovery call. But also what's crucial is that the buyer articulates these things. We don't want to imply that they have a problem or assume there's problems. This needs to be something that is spoken. And that comes from your ability to ask good questions to get them to reveal the problems and the impacts. Right? It's not enough to just have a problem. If there isn't a consequence, then the buyer is not necessarily going to invest in fixing it. So artificial intelligence can help you analyze your success at identifying these problems and impacts, and also develop questions to identify problems and impacts you may have missed. So let me show you this in action using a real reps call transcript. I'm using ChatGPT 4.0 because there's no word count limit. You may need to use a paid version so you can fit the whole transcript in. So it's pretty simple, right? The first prompt is, please tell me what problems the customer describes in this discovery call. And then you just paste your transcript in. I've pasted a transcript in from a gong call that a rep I work with has. And then you scroll down past it all. And here's what you get. In this discovery call, Susan from Bell Integration describes several key problems they are facing. I'm not going to go through all these problems. I just want to show you the prompts. Now, what's interesting in this is that ChatGPT will imply some problems sometimes, right? The customer may not have even said those. You may say, hey, I don't remember talking about that specifically. So it may be making some assumptions, but we want to know the difference. You may remember the differences if this is your call, but follow up with this prompt. Does the customer say all of those problems out loud? And here you'll get, no, the customer does not explicitly state all of these problems out loud. Here's a summary of the problems that Susan explicitly mentions, right? That's very valuable, right? Now we know what we learned specifically and what we didn't, right? Pretty powerful. This is giving you some problems you may not have thought to ask, but also you can narrow it down. So you could say, please tell me only the problems that the customer said, not implied. And now it's going to give you the explicit problems you have. So this is the real takeaway. Now you also want to learn, this is where you are enhancing your skills with the artificial intelligence, is you can go back and look at what was implied and what was actually spoken, and now you're learning something. You can ask it to compare the two. Tell me what I missed. Or you could also ask it a further question. What problems might this customer have that I didn't ask? Right? So this might give you a further list. Again, since it's taking your transcript and what it knows about the titles and so forth, it's giving you a broader industry analysis of this. So now you're learning more about your buyer's problems. Now you need to check these things, right? This is a brainstorming partner here. This is not necessarily always going to be factually correct, but we're trying to learn what problems we uncovered and what we didn't. You can further advance your skills. This is where it really gets important, is what questions could you have asked to get at those problems? So here's the next prompt. All these prompts are, by the way, listed below in the written version of this post. So what questions could I have asked to understand if the customer has these problems? And now you're getting some ways to connect with your buyer to get them to speak out loud about these problems. You're going to get more than you need. You could pick one to test next time, or you could pick one to follow up with on your next call. So now we've got the problems, what we know and we don't know for problems, and we now need to move on to impacts. A lot of reps I work with are pretty good at uncovering problems, but they often are not as good at getting at the impacts. And the impacts are essential, right? If the buyer is going to change, they have to know the impact. Why now? Why change? It's not just enough to know the problems. So now you can ask ChatGPT or your AI, what are the impacts on the customer's business of not fixing these problems? Right? So now you're getting a list. Similar process here, right? That it's going to imply some things. And over time, as you get more comfortable with this, you can, of course, refine your prompts to be like, hey, tell me just what the customer said, not implied, things like that. But we're building here because we're trying to learn. So you would follow up on this like only what the customer said, not implied. And now ChatGPT is going to be based on what the customer explicitly stated during the call, the impacts on their business are. Right? And you're getting to that. Sometimes it might say no impacts. I've seen that a lot. There's no impacts discussed. And now you know, like, oh, really, I need to learn. And either way, right, you can now ask the follow-up question, what questions could I have asked to get the customer to recognize the impact of not solving these issues? And here you're getting more questions that you can ask the customer next time. Right. So that's the basic building blocks. The prompts are below. But again, you're using ChatGPT or another artificial intelligence to analyze your call quickly on problems and impacts. And if you see things like there were no problems discussed or there were no impacts, now you want to either learn from it, what impacts could there have been, and also what questions could I have asked. And now you've got some tools for your next discovery call to follow up with better questions, and you can and build your talk track from that. So hope this helps. It's a starting point for analyzing your calls and using artificial intelligence to get better questions to understand your buyer better.